Yeah, 15 people so far, maybe more. I don't trust that number to show it accurately. So this is Pinarello powered Park Perimeter Loop Stage 2. I'm on my Pinarello Dogma F 2024. Obviously, that's the bike provided for the stage. And then I've got the NV78s equipped because I need as much help as I can with keeping up on the downhills and the flats. And so last time I raced this on Monday, did good, 8th place, had 4th place, and then I lost it at the end because I could not get up that climb fast enough to maintain it. Completely burnt myself out. There was a couple efforts that I knew I burned some matches, so to speak. So I'm gonna see how I do today. I'm on a new drivetrain altogether. New bottom bracket, new chain rings, new chain. And so see how we do. Upgraded from my Shimano Optilink, something like that. Essentially like a classic Shimano 105 or a hub, or bottom bracket rather, to the Shimano Holotech 2, supposedly the Ultegra version. And so it is not as smooth as I thought it would be. Also a lot of creaky, trying to fix that. And the got 5339 oval chain rings and a 165 crank arm. So completely new setup for me. So I don't know how I'm gonna do. I don't know how this is gonna go. We got some strong riders in this group. So hopefully I can keep up. The goal is to podium, but at minimum, top 10, at best podium. And so we'll see what strategy I need to implement depending on how strong this group goes out and whether or not there's any serious breakaways. Last time we rode this, it was a pretty mild start. I don't know if it's going to be that way today. So we'll see in 5 seconds. A couple people out the gate.
All right, so as a group gets established here, a fairly just a little bit stronger tempo than I'd like to begin with. I got the usual names in here, and didn't realize that one of the riders in here is also part of the Kaboom and the Drop Cycling Discord group, and so we're just all kind of hanging out here. I'm trying to do my best to not stay off the front. I ended up riding on the front for a little too long, and so I pushed myself to the back and did my best to get into the draft as much as possible. But I kept losing the wheel of the group, so I pushed myself back up to the front. Or rather, I let myself coast up to the front, and then just kind of kept playing that game a bit and tried staying towards the front so that way I didn't fall off the back as I usually do, because again, this group is going stronger than than I initially anticipated. And so in the beginning, I thought, I could podium on this group, but that was a mistake to think that. So we get to the hill, which is, where I thought I would test my legs, new drivetrain, see how things are going. And I will say, I totally understand now why Christian likes old chain rings, because you feel like, you see here I'm holding 300 plus watts, which is becoming my average, but also pushing up towards the upper ends of the 300. And it's painful, but I feel like it's easier to push those watts. And that was me going somewhat mild in the sense that I was trying to hold some power back. Obviously, the group got away from me, and so the couple guys ahead of me, I did my best to bridge up to them, so that way we can at least stay together. And I was gonna try and bridge this group, but realized that was gonna cost me a lot of power. I was already starting to hurt at this point. My legs were a little bit sore, partially from last couple rides that I did, but also this new chainring setup. I didn't realize that my seat, um, when I tested it out, my seat height felt good. It actually felt uncomfortably good, where I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what, and it felt good. So I left it as is. Lo and behold, what ended up happening was my seat was a few millimeters, like 5 millimeters too far down. So I was using a lot more of my quads than I'd like on this ride. Excuse me. And because of that, my legs were sore. And so as I was realizing that, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to catch up to the front group. And I kept looking at how far off they are. So right now they're only about 25 seconds off from the front of us. So I was thinking, hey, if I can work with this Medina, then I could, then we could try and, work together, bridge that gap. But as you see, every time Medina came through, they would push hard and kind of disappear into the distance. And like right here, I start to, fall off their wheel. And for some reason, that hill before the sprint always feels like it's 30% to me. Like every time I start getting towards the upper edge of that hill, my legs are just cooked. And so, they go ahead, and I do the work to try and get back on the wheel. Again, starting to realize that something's not right. My legs are hurting a lot more than I anticipated. And so, looking at where I'm at on the stage, I see that I got Medina within 4 seconds of me. So my focus is, let me get back on their wheel, see if we can work together. Generally when I want to work with somebody, what I'll do is I'll basically push through, get ahead of them, but hold them within the drafting distance, so within a couple meters. And even if I have to slow down a bit, I will slow down a bit, keep them in my draft. I'm upper 80s, 89 kilogram, 88 kilogram rider, 100 low 190 pounds. And so you can see that's what I'm doing here. I got essentially Medina behind me, and then they passed me on the climb because again I start getting towards the top of the climb. My legs are just tightening up, and they push on real hard. So it's like, all right, whatever. We're not going to work together, but I'm gonna still ride my race. I'm gonna do my best to keep up, catch up, pushing. Trying to stay into the mid 200 watt average, so that way I can, because I know when I push into the upper 200s, I know I can bridge them easily. Those NB78s, they might be heavy wheels, but on the flats and on the downhill, they are super fast, super aero. And so I know I can bridge up to them, bridge up to Medina if I wanted to. Um, but I just did not want to put that. I was so sore, so exhausted. I didn't want to put that power out. So I was like, all right, let me just keep them within a few seconds and do my best to uh, to try and catch up. And then after the race finished, the person that was behind me, Brian Hampton, was mentioning, he's like, man, he's like, I got within 10 seconds. And, truth be told, I was watching that the whole time. I was, when I'm racing, I look at the map for elevation and I look at the rider names for gaps. I look to see, should, should I drop back and, you know, should I drop back and join a group that's gonna, that looks like they're gonna eventually pass me anyways? Or should I, try and bridge the gap ahead of me and get into that group? And in this case, I kept Medina within reach, and so I kept pushing towards catching up to Medina, which unfortunately left me, staying ahead of Brian. And it was good. It was for me, it was a good laugh at the end because I was like, I was watching to see how far they are, how far Brian was behind me. I didn't realize, that was that specific person, but I always look to see, who's behind me, how far off they are. If they're catching up, then what work we can do together to try and keep the momentum going. So in this case here, going up the hill again, going up the hill on the oval chain rings was fantastic. It feels great. I also, changed my crank arms to 165, so I think that also adds to it. So when you're out of the saddle, it feels weird because it feels like you're almost leaning forward, and and that's where the momentum's at for the pedal action versus up and down. And so you feel like you're spinning your legs faster. And then, seeing the power numbers, you really are putting out more power for the same effort as circular chain rings. At least that's what I feel from essentially from one race to the next. Because I raced this on Monday with my regular 5339 circular chain rings. And so also, had to switch bottom brackets and all that. And so here I'm just looking at, Medina and I are, I'm trying to stay together. I figure we can work together towards the end. That person's holding a pretty solid, effort. And so every time I lose a wheel, you know, they'll gap me and get 4 or 5 seconds ahead of me. And so I'm doing my best to just kind of work here. I know we're coming towards the end, so I'm thinking, let me work a little bit. I'll keep them in my draft. I'll keep Medina in my draft, and then, I still have my power up. So when it comes towards the end, I will drop back and kind of pull what I typically see in bike races. I'll drop back behind the person, and I saw here, I was like, oh, Medina's like gone. And again, it's the same hill on this sprint. I don't know what it is about this hill that gets me every time. And so, I see they get a handful of seconds ahead, and I'm like, oh man, I'm not gonna be able to do what I want to do. And then on the downhill here, again, because of the NB7.8s, I was able to catch up. And so the whole time I'm thinking like, okay, Medina just used his draft. And, I was thinking like, oh, that's perfect for how I want to finish. Because now I know they don't have a power up, and I do. So I dropped back behind Medina, and just once I feel like I was ready to launch, I go ahead and launch because I know that I'm looking at the miles left, the percentage miles left. I was gonna say meters because that's what I'm used to looking at. I just recently switched to to imperial units, and it's so weird to me. And so right here I'm looking at like, oh, it's got zero point 0.3 miles left. Might as well start pushing forward. And again, Medina was only pulling low 200s. So I start, as I start passing them, I start realizing like I'm just gonna jump ahead. So I start staying in the mid to upper 200s, and as you can see, I created a pretty good gap pretty quickly, at 2 seconds right now, and use my power up and just pushing hard to get up this hill and make sure that I've got, enough of a distance to keep 14th place. I was hoping to get a higher place, but it didn't happen.
Oh my gosh. What? No way.
So afterwards, I found out that there were two Medinas, E Medina and D Medina. I didn't realize D Medina had gone up the road because my focus was on E Medina. And so I usually try and make a point to finish with Medina since they're a strong rider. But when I saw that, I was super surprised. So I'm glad to know there's two of them out there.